Good afternoon. This is a great symposium. Thank you for inviting me, CalPro. And I really want to start, of course, by acknowledging the leadership and vision of both Marianne and Deborah Jones for convening this symposium, particularly at this time. I know how tough things are here in California. They are all over the country. But it's great to see that you have your sights set on the future and how to make it better for our field and our learners. I also want to applaud the directors who are here for your vision and resilience and for your focus on program improvement. I know that you had to apply to come here. Not everybody, I'm sure, applied, but you made that choice to take this time out of your busy schedule when I know things are tough at the home front with the budget crisis. So thanks for that. And so for starters, I thought to bring you greetings from Boston. You know, we're based in Boston. World Education is the home of both the National College Transition Network and the New England Literacy Resource Center, among other things. So greetings from Boston. Sometimes it's very attractive there. Hope you come and visit us. Sometimes, of course, it looks like this. You know, you have your wildfires. We have our snow and ice. We have these parking wars sometimes. Try taking that parking slot after that guy shoveled the snow. That's Boston in the winter. We're heading there. Or it looks like this. Yeah. So nice to be here in California. But I didn't come to talk about Boston, of course, as much as we need to talk about this college readiness business. And you all know already that this proverbial bar has been raised on us and our field and our students by the changing economy. That much we know. We know now that the GED or the diploma is not enough. When we thought our work was done, and here we are, realizing we have to do more with the same or less. According to several studies, namely Education Testing Service most recently, there really are substantial economic benefits to post-secondary degrees. And if you can read this chart, you'll see that it's about $7,000 increments a year, as you get even some college degree between high school and college. And that's a considerable sum of money in the work life of a person. And that's a message that we should really tell our students. We should know that. But who needs to know that are the adult learners, because that's motivating. So if we add this up, and let's say that the person is in, let's say they're 32 by the time they get some college under their belt coming out of our ESOL or GED program. That's close to $250,000 in the remaining work life of that person. That's not a negligible sum of money, and we would do well for our students if we let them know that. So we used to think that enrolling students in post-secondary educational training is the culmination of our efforts. The NRS still seems to think that. But now we know that's not enough. Access is just not enough. It doesn't really count for much to get people into college if they can't stay there. And that message has come out loud and clear this morning, I know. There are studies that show that the economic returns can be almost nothing from just, say, 1 or 2 courses. Norton Grubb is a researcher who's looked into that. So we need to know what's the tipping point. And as it happens, there is a study called the Tipping Point Study. I'm surprised no one has yet mentioned the state of Washington where this study was done. It seems to be mentioned in every event of this sort. And there they found that what adults needed were 45 credits and a credential. That was the tipping point for that $7,000 on the average additional earnings a year. So it behooves us to know it's some college, but it's a certain sum amount. It's not just one class. And that's because access by itself just isn't good enough for us anymore. And the reason why it really matters is that it's very likely that the majority of adult ABE and ESOL learners really never get to enjoy those economic benefits the way things stand right now. And the worst case scenario is that they're worse off if they go to college. Why? We know why. Why? Because they may be in debt, and they may have lower self-efficacy because they flunked those courses. No one told them that you have to get a C grade point average, or you have to actually attend classes every day, and it counts toward grade, and you have to participate because that counts toward the grade. We don't teach those things in ABE usually. So they could be worse off. And we also know that the vast majority of ABE and ESOL learners go into college through developmental studies. What's perhaps a little less known is that, according to a study that just came out this year, and this to me was shocking, 40% of the ones referred to developmental never showed up for the first course. We think we've enrolled them. These are people who were enrolled. They didn't want to go there. Or in California, apparently you can just enroll in Psych 101 and flunk there. And of the folks who made it to the course, half didn't complete it. So it's a really uphill battle. And so many adults do get stuck in those developmental classes, and that's our challenge here, to figure out how do we help in this process of helping them accelerate their learning and actually complete the degree or credential. The same Washington State, before they got to the iBest program that I'll tell you a little bit more about later, they found that less than 30% of AB and GD learners actually made it to college-level courses in the 5 years that they were in developmental. For ESOL students, it was 13%. So 5 years in developmental, 13% made it to college-level credit-bearing courses. Not good. And they either, of course, paid for it out of pocket or they had the grants. So it's also, if you think about our common resources, our tax base, it's not good economics to pay for that when people are not ready to really benefit from it. So the task falls on us. The reality, of course, is that we're not set up as a field. We're not accustomed to thinking about these as performance goals. To measure access, to measure how well people do in college. And we certainly are not funded to do that at this point. And that's an issue. But we need to come to terms with the fact that unless we prepare adult learners, the odds are totally against them making it. And that's certainly been the message of the day. But the good news is that we actually know what to do. We know how to do it. There's plenty of research already and professional wisdom. Not that there isn't need for more, but we know what to do. The women before me, right before lunch, what great concrete advice they gave you. Before we talk about this college readiness, I don't feel I could go on to talk about it without acknowledging the lack of funding we have to do that. Because there are program improvements we can do with what we have right now. But nationally anyway, the range of cost per student is somewhere between $700 and $1,800 per student. We can't do a good job with that amount of cost per student. We can tinker on the edges, yeah, but we cannot provide the service that needs to be provided to bridge this gap. I don't believe we can. So there's a huge role for advocacy here. And I'm glad that we have Brenda Messier in a high position who really understands the realities at the adult program level. I'm fond of saying that in Boston, when a kid drops out of Boston Public School and walks down the block and enrolls in a GED program, their slot, the value that we place on their education drops from almost $13,000 per student to $1,800 for the same goal of graduating that young man or woman and preparing them for college or training. And of course, teaching them life skills. So it's an equity issue, frankly. It's an equity issue. Meanwhile, we do know, I wanted to acknowledge this before I go on and on to talk about college readiness. And I should tell you also that any research that I reference at this point is going to be a handout later, and we're going to break for discussion. So I'm not going to talk here for an hour. But we do need to define college readiness in order to know where we're trying to go. And the National College Transition Network has been working on that. We have the toolkit that you know, but we will be coming out also with a framework of college readiness for adults. You might know that there are frameworks and guides for college readiness for high school students. But they're relevant, but they have things like advanced placement classes, and the assumptions are that parents are involved. They're not really applicable to us 100%. We need our own framework. And the framework that we've come up with has 4 components. There's, of course, the academic knowledge and skills, and I'll talk about that more momentarily. There's this college knowledge. There's also the career awareness and planning that has been referenced. And then there's a piece that's particularly important for adults that many others have referenced. It's the personal readiness piece. So let's look at these a little bit more in detail. And let's start with the academic knowledge and skills, the stuff that we are probably most used to thinking about when we think of college readiness. The academic reading, writing, math. And in this category, we also include the skills of academic self-management that I'll talk about later because they are very, very important for our adult learners, and by and large, not ones that we are used to teaching or focusing on, but they can make or break a person's persistence in college. So on the academic knowledge and skills piece, it's a big chunk of work. On the math side, in New England, we had a demonstration project that Dorcas Place was part of for 7 years called AB to College Transition Project. And we tracked the data by student. We did pre and post testing with the AccuPlacer and various more qualitative assessments and surveys of students' readiness. And the Achilles heel was always the math, for by and large. 72% of the students, after attending a 14-week transition program additional to the GED, once they took a post-test, they did place in college-level courses. On the math, it was a different story altogether. There, we're looking at 11% placing in college-level math. Another 15% moved up enough to the highest developmental math class. Still, that left us with 74% of people who did not, after 14 weeks of additional prep, make it to college-level math. Now, perhaps we could have run a more accelerated program. These were, by and large, working adults, average age 32, income below $25,000, going an additional 10 to 12 hours a week. Add that to a GED, I'm not quite sure how much time people have. We do know from research, though, that if you can offer a more intensive course, shorter and higher intensity, the learning gains tend to be higher. Now, you rule out the folks who hold 2 jobs and raise families, probably. That's one of our many challenges in our field. It's not a reason to not offer it if you have enough pool of students who could commit to that, maybe over summer, and those models exist. But they're probably not a feasible model for most of our field, given the demands on our students' time. So the buzzword on the academic side, the academic skills, is these words that have been said over and over today already: integration, alignment, or you were calling it articulation. Maybe the alignment has less of a connotation of the articulation with four-year colleges, but alignment of the curriculum and integration. The integration is often done in 2 ways. One is dual enrollment, or credit by exam, seems to be an option here in this state, which is a great thing to investigate, or through really co-instruction model. A dual enrollment could be that you take one course at the AB level and another course at the college level, and that requires often an agreement with the post-secondary institution, and we'll get to that. In Kentucky, there's a model that's been highlighted often because they really co-branded their GED in the Jefferson County Adult Ed program and technical college, co-branded a program, really joined forces in a fairly uncommon way. They called it the Educational Enrichment Service. And in this case, the students really didn't know they were both GED students and developmental students at the same time. So it is an accelerated model. They tracked the data, and they had a very impressive 82% completion rate. And that's all about 2 institutions, a school district-based program, not a college-based program, and college collaborating. Now, as I understand, they're across the street from each other, which helped that relationship building, I'm sure. So that's a real fusion, concurrent enrollment model. There's quite a bit of research on this dual enrollment business from K-12 particularly. Of course, our field always has less research than any other branch of education because we don't have the money for it. But on K-12 side, Florida and New York City were sites, and basically students were more likely to graduate from high school, to enroll in college full-time, persist into their second semester, get higher GPAs, take more credits. Once they got that experience and motivation, you already have some credits under your belt. That is happening not just in Kentucky on the adult ed side, but it's definitely something to investigate if you're not already looking into that. Washington State's IBEST model is what we call an integrated model, where literally the faculty from college and the AB or ESOL side co-instruct part of the time. So that, and then students go off and take the additional hours of instruction separately. Now that's a more expensive model, and the state has put a lot more money into it. But it's a model that's touted as a very effective one, and for a reason. It's been well documented by now. So as a system level, it's a real system level model, and one that is probably more difficult to pull off at an local level. I'm not sure. Maybe our career pathway folks here can look into that. El Paso is a place where we've done a little bit of work with an El Paso Adult Ed Consortium, actually. Okay, so the contextualization through co-instruction is, Washington State is one example. Let me just look at my slides here so I know what I'm showing you. And in El Paso, we've worked with a consortium where school district-based programs, and I know many of you are that, formed a consortium with the local El Paso Community College for the precise purpose of creating a college transition program. And we worked with them to design that program. It involved three school district-based programs and the college. The college actually paid for a coordinator who also taught a writing class. They developed a curriculum. It's an all ESOL, all Latino program. They decided that what they needed was a pre-transition level program, that the gap was so large. And in that program, they, of course, teach academic English, reading and writing, but they also teach math. They use the Turks Empower curriculum. They teach math at all levels of ESL in that program, as a matter of fact. Most of their students don't have a lot of formal education. And here's the other key design element from that experience that's going on. They have very heavy emphasis on personal readiness for college. They do counseling, support groups, workshops. It's 2/3 women, Latina women. So they have workshops like women's role outside of in the family and outside the family, taking care of yourself. They concluded that the personal readiness was key to addressing it right side by side with academic skills if they were going to go anywhere. In the end, this became level 6 or 7 of the ESL, and one of the 3 programs is running it in El Paso, and the others refer to it. So that was their arrangement. But they still work very closely with the college and the Texas professional. The CalPro equivalent in Texas works with them, Texas Learns. Texas on the Great Centers, I think they're called. So that's an El Paso model. In New England, one of the projects that Sandy Goodman directs is called Transitions to College and Careers. And in New England, we are lots of small states with lots of small programs. So the IBEST model really doesn't work for us in most places because we don't have the critical mass of students going for one career. And all of our states run adult ed through a mixed delivery system or through school districts. We don't have a community college-based system for ABE. And so we had to solve this problem. Well, how do you prepare people when you get 20 people in a class with 10 or 20 career aspirations? What's the pre-transition component or the pre-voc component look like? And the solution we came up with was a blended model with an online course. The first one that we launched this year is an Introduction to Health Sciences, where students who are going for allied health take that as a cohort. So we have students taking it from 6 sites together. And it's blended model in that they're also taking the more generic academic skills on site through a grant that we mediated, but are also working with the states to take over funding of. And this additional online course is where they learn chemistry, they learn about anatomy, digestive system, genetics, the kinds of courses you need to get into nursing programs and allied health programs that their programs don't offer as a rule, and gives them a little bit of a leg up as they go for that. Very good results. Students have loved it, the programs like it, and we are looking into whether there's other career tracks where we could provide that service for smaller programs, because they really shouldn't have to do that on their own. In any cohort, you have maybe 5-10 students going for a particular career, the numbers that we deal with. So that's the blended online instruction model. So the study skills really is better called academic self-management, because it really is about teaching students how to manage their own learning, and particularly important skill is monitoring your understanding. There's ample evidence from research that when we teach students to monitor their understanding, they actually persist better. And there are specific strategies that we can do that with. We can do it at all levels, as a matter of fact, and should. It builds self-efficacy, and self-efficacy predicts persistence. And for that, we also have quite a bit of research. And assessing whether you know something turns out to be a skill that we don't do very well in any level of education. We tend to overestimate whether we know something. We think, and our students think, that if we read the text 3 times, we know it. Well, generally we don't. That's not a way to process information. There are strategies like what's called delayed judgment, where you study, you turn your attention away from it, and then come back to it. And there are different ways in which techniques that we can teach students that will serve them very well, and we can teach them as part of GED, ESOL, ABE, and we should, no matter whether they go to college or not. So this academic self-management is a very important part of the college readiness. And the big idea here is monitoring, helping students learn how to monitor their understanding. Then there are the more conventional study skills of note-taking during lectures and that sort of thing. And that's all part of that one of 4 elements of academic knowledge and skills. The second area of college readiness is what we call college knowledge. And this is the area of really getting your life in order so that you can go to college. No, sorry, that's personal readiness. This is about really knowing how to navigate the college environment. This is your admissions, financial aid, knowing that it's important to avail yourself of counselors and advisors. And it is about the relationships. Nancy and Janet talked a lot about, and actually Brenda as well, the huge importance of developing relationships, both for us as programs, but also for students. Knowing people on campus who are in positions to help them. Knowing where they are, knowing them by name. That's the kind of thing that we can do without a lot of extra money. We can help people form those relationships on campus, even if you're school district based, you're not part of the college. There's lots of research on this, that students' sense of belonging and connectedness relates to persistence. It predicts persistence, it aids persistence. In AB, at all levels, really. It's not just about going to college. So, on the college knowledge side, as was mentioned earlier, we can reach out for the trio counselors and to come and do the admissions process, explain the admissions and the financial aid processes so that people can navigate the system a little better. There's research about student success skills courses. And I think one of our presenters later is going to talk about that. We really need to make sure that students know that those success skills seminars or courses, if they exist in the college where you are sending students, they should take them, even if they're not required. In some cases they are required, but in many cases they're not. And again, people can bypass them, and there's a lot of benefit to that, and that has been researched. One of the things that people get out of those success skills courses are actually relationships. Social networks with each other, people they can rely on, and that is a factor that helps them later on and connects them to the school community and brings them back there. It's really the same thing when a person comes to enroll in your literacy class. What is it that we can do for them that they create that sense of belonging right away? They have a connection to you and will come back. In New England, we have a practice that we do in some places, and we're hopefully starting it in Boston. It's called College for a Day. And this is a way to provide exposure to the college campus. It's more than a tour. It involves recruiting college faculty to guest teach classes. It involves presentations, a little bit like what Brenda was saying that they do with Dorcas Place in Providence. We draw from multiple programs at the same time, who prepare students before they go on campus, and then it requires some funding because the faculty are paid to pay these instruct these introductory courses or sample classes, really about 2 hours in duration each. And then students really get a sense of what is it like to be not just on campus, but also in a class. They do meet the deans of admissions, financial aid, student support services as well. So College for a Day is a documented promising practice on NCTN's website. If you're interested in replicating it, that's why we documented it for you. But it's that exposure again. Anything we can bridge the gap. We all know that most of our students are first-generation college students. So there's not necessarily anybody in the family who's telling them, oh, you should do this and you should talk to that. So it's on us. So, okay, I'm like Brenda, I'm forgetting to, so this is about, here's what we just talked about, by way of review. Now, the third area of college readiness, as I said, there are 4, is that career thing. That, and this is, of course, about really knowing what you want to study, to put it simply. I mean, adults don't have time or money to waste. And by the time they go to college, they usually do that not for the intrinsic pleasure of learning, but because they do want a better, they want to make a better living. They want a career. And so our responsibility is to help them figure that out. What are their aptitudes? Are there jobs in that particular field in your area? Most of our adults don't move to go to college in another community, or they're right there in that community. What's available there? What does it pay? Are there career pathways? Can you really move up in that career ladder? And it would be great if we could also give them a sense of what is it really like to be a nurse. Do you want to work with sick people and see blood? And I know Dorcas Place, you had job shadowing and internships. That's the kind of stuff we need to do. Many people go for careers and, again, waste time and money only to realize this is not for me. We don't want them to do that. This is the kind of thing we can also do without too much extra effort, though having advisors and career counselors would be nice. What do you suppose is the ratio on the average of how many advisors to a student on the average community college campus?
1 to 500.
1 to 500. Any other guesses? 1 to 2,000? Yeah, so it's somewhere in the, if you get 1 to 1,000. We ought to know that in AB. If we don't go to that world of community colleges, we don't necessarily know that the ratio is about 1 to 1,000. So our students are 1 of 1,000 looking for advice if they know to look for advice. How aggressive do you have to be to stand out as 1 of 1,000? Again, it's left on us to really prepare them, because most colleges, they don't have the resources to provide a high level of advising, much less case management, unless they're one of the Gates funded or Hewlett, privately funded demonstration projects. We know what to do. It's just that the money really isn't there to support it. So there's a really interesting study about scholarships that MDRC is doing. $2,000 predicts persistence if you give it out right. I thought that was amazing. And in this case, the way it was given out was coupled with kind of counseling light. People had to come to a couple sessions of counseling. They got it in $500 increments if they maintained at least a C average grade point, and were at least enrolled half-time. Well, those people persisted higher than any of the other control groups or other intervention groups. There were other combinations of this intervention that were tried out at the same time, and the ones that had the scholarship coupled with counseling were the ones who persisted. Personal readiness, actually. So personal readiness, then, is the fourth category, and in many ways, actually, the scholarships relate to that, to get your life in order. This is about looking into the work schedule, the childcare arrangements, talking to your family members. Are they going to be there to support you? Are you going to do the dishes while mom is in college? Do you have reliable transportation? These are extremely important things, as you can imagine, for adults' ability to continue to attend college. And having financing is, of course, part of that mixture. But there are studies that suggest that these actually matter more than the academic preparation. If one of those things falls through, it's more likely that an adult will drop out than adults who have this part of their life in order and have a little bit lower academic skills. And it stands to reason, when your childcare arrangements fall through, what are you going to do? Or your car breaks down and there's no money. And that's where the $2,000, by the way, the scholarship could be used for any college attendance-related expenses, like a car or computer or childcare. And that's what made a difference. It wasn't your usual scholarship that was given to the college. So what can we do? We can't buy cars for people. We can't really help them with their two jobs. There are a lot of life circumstances that are beyond our control, but there are some things that we can do. We can help teach people maybe a little bit more time management skills, and I always cringe a little bit about this, because when people are managing to work two jobs and raise families, what time is there to manage, you know? But I do know that we can make sure that we all probably can benefit from looking at is there any time where you could study? I mean, if a person cannot think of extra time they have in their schedule to study and they're going to college, they might as well not go, because they have to have time to study, not just show up in class. It's not ABE. So there's that kind of scheduling help that we can do that gets often called time management. We can also help our students look for scholarships. We can advocate for eligibility for scholarships that currently GED graduates are not eligible for. There's lots of scholarships for high school graduates that our folks are pretty much categorically ineligible to apply for. There are others that they can apply for and should. But again, we kind of need to know what they are to help them know what they are, because they know less than we do as far as financing goes. And we can really impress upon them that they need to talk to their family members, that this is this is a serious commitment, and get that support from there to the extent that it's possible. And sometimes it's not, I know. So without preparation in all these 4 areas of academic readiness, academic self-management, college knowledge, personal readiness, and career awareness, the odds are against our students' success. That's the sad reality. And at this point, what I'd like to do is break for an activity. What I have prepared for you is excerpts from some of the research I've mentioned, and each table will get one two-sided, a set of two-sided handouts that discuss research relating to one of the readiness factors. And what I'd like you to do for the next 15 minutes is to talk about the implications of that research for practice and policy. Okay? Then I'm going to come back and talk about 3 challenges that we face. I need to conclude my part with you. I hope actually, let me just, I'm glad Nancy and Janet talked a lot about partnerships, because they're so important to this college transition work. So they covered my piece for me. Thank you, Nancy and Janet, and better, because you have very concrete information on what to do in California. So the question really is, are we ready for college readiness? Now, you know that we have some things to offer, and I'm just going to conclude by inviting you to come to New England and learn more. We have more time, we have more workshops, we have a conference coming up November 16th and 17th in Providence, and we'll have more time then to talk about all these topics and learn from people from all around the country. And it looks kind of like this, so come over to New England before the snow comes. Thank you.